The patch notes for the 2nd January update are here, and boy have we got some good stuff coming in this one. Despite the rocky launch for Battlefield 5 and the subsequent issues with patching the game and those introducing more bugs, one thing you can say is that DICE's effort to improve and iterate on the experience is pretty clear to see. In this update, we've got the introduction of the Stug assault gun vehicle for the Axis faction, updates to the practice range, overhauls to the Panzerstorm map, and lots of bug fixes besides. Let's start off then with the Stug. This is an assault gun variant of the Panzer IV tank, and is built almost exclusively for destroying other tanks in the game in surprise attacks. The main gun is in an almost fixed position. There's only a very small amount of movement that can be made here, so instead you're going to need to align the hull of your tank against an enemy vehicle in order to properly target it. If you spent a lot of time in the Sturmtiger reinforcement, it's kind of similar to that. It is a slight downside with it being a tank that you can deploy in quite often in Battlefield 5, but with there being no turret to facilitate, the silhouette of the tank is smaller, and that makes it easier to hide behind cover or against foliage. There's a top gunner position and a remote-controlled machine gun on the secondary passenger position inside the tank too, so plenty of firepower to use for taking down nearby infantry. The specialisation tree for the Stug will allow drivers to gear their machine more towards armour or infantry attack with different options, so there's something for everybody with this new vehicle. An allied equivalent will be coming soon in the Lightning Strikes chapter as well, it's just not launching straight away. Moving on, it's time to talk about the Panzerstorm map. DICE has been hard at work taking feedback on the map since it was launched in December, and I think it's pretty obvious that at the moment the map is heavily geared towards vehicle combat, and that is by design. It's a massive open field, lots of tanks, lots of planes in the sky. It's a vehicle player's paradise. Now, you might remember back in the Battlefield 1 days, some maps were discussed within the community back then that could have done with some changes, like Suez, for example. Looking even further back, there are lots of examples of Battlefield maps throughout history that could have done with some tweaking after they got released, but they never got any further love. They became these static additions that lived on with the game, and many of them being part of some DLC pack, they were split across the player base, with less people playing them. Seems times have changed somewhat with Battlefield 5 because DICE is going ahead with some quite substantial changes for Panzerstorm. Now, I hope this is a sign that DICE is becoming more open to adapting and changing previously static content, just as they're doing with limited time game modes and events in Battlefield 5. They're changing the dynamic of the game and improving the value of the content that they've already produced. Everybody loves brand new content for sure, not disputing that, but if older content can be changed, freshened up and improved, then I'd say that's great for the game as well. It breathes new life into things that you didn't expect to change. These changes to Panzerstorm are being based on community feedback and in-game telemetry that's been taken by DICE from the millions of players who've set foot on the map since December, looking at different patterns and trends and trying to just make the experience better. Now, bear in mind, I don't have any images or footage of these changes right now. We'll see that tomorrow when the patch drops, so for now, you'll just have to picture these things in your head. First of all, the biggest change. The F flag point is being totally revamped. Swine Farm is getting additional buildings to make it nearly 4 times bigger than it currently is. The aim is to make infantry feel like they've got more cover there, and to make it a more desirable location for tanks and vehicles to fight over. An oak tree alley has been added to the road connecting the D and G flags to make it slightly easier for infantry to navigate across what is a very open area. It will also restrict the line of sight for vehicles as well. More mounds have been added around the edges of fields and along roadways to give infantry more protection when moving from objective to objective. DICE is calling this the Arras treatment. More heights to the terrain, different levels of ridges, changes to stone walls and roads, with deeper ditches alongside those roads as well. One of the main complaints about Panzerstorm is that when you're playing as infantry, and sometimes you do have to, or some people just like playing as infantry, It's just not that great of an experience outside of the C and D flags, which I do totally agree with. It is nice to see DICE addressing this whilst maintaining the vehicle dominance of the map as well. It needs to remain a vehicle-focused map, but the experience for infantry players is being somewhat improved. More soft cover is being applied to the ground between the A and the D flags in the form of trees. Right now, the closer you get to the D flag, the more tank rubble that appears. But beyond that, and up the hill to the A flag, vehicles can be seen clear as day, and they make for very easy targets if they're not moving too much. Just last week, I managed to destroy 2 tanks with 1 V1 rocket because neither of the tanks moved, even though it took like 45 seconds for the V1 rocket to come all the way across. The house at the D flag, that's being rotated, so the windows on the top floor, they can be used for sniping out of. Ladders have been added to the barn on the D flag, so you can get up on top of the roof and look out onto the fields beyond, giving infantry more vision on incoming threats. And the oak alley that I mentioned earlier, that will be visible from the roof as well, so lines of sight won't be quite as clear as what they used to be, but you have an elevated position. The path between the D and E flags is being changed quite significantly. More terrain differences here and soft cover is being applied to allow infantry more safety before they commit and make the dash out into the open across the field and try and take the next flag. DICE's telemetry found that lots of players were being killed here from angles that they couldn't cover properly since there was so much open space and fighting became really erratic between the 2 points, so hopefully that's been addressed with these changes. More cover is being applied between the B and C flags as DICE is extending the tank defense line across the map a little bit further. The hope here is that the strong infantry presence at C, D and E flags can all push right across to B as well, and that'll create a 4 flag line where infantry can thrive and they can influence the flow of the gameplay right the way across the middle of the map. And lastly, the flight ceiling on Panzerstorm is being increased because players asked for it, and more fortification positions on the map have been added as well. As I said earlier, with DICE putting this time into improving Panzerstorm after it's been added to the game, I'd love to see similar treatment being applied to some of the other maps that we already have, increasing the value and the entertainment that we have. Aerodrome could really benefit from increased cover around the edges of the map, and perhaps more emphasis placed on other objectives outside of the main hangar. That hangar is a very congested area, and I think that's by design, but I believe that more emphasis should be put in other places. Maybe transforming some of the other flags into more entertaining areas is something I'd definitely like to see. Fjell is another one. I'd love to see a bit more indestructible solid cover implemented to help control the flow of that map and make enemy positions just slightly more predictable. That map is the highest on my list for deaths that I had no idea where the enemy was. Time is going to tell if DICE does do more of this changing and editing to existing maps, but I think it really does add more value to existing content, and 100% it makes me want to try Panzerstorm tomorrow with these changes. Moving on, let's quickly go over some practice range changes. This is an addition that I think most players were quite disappointed with when it went live. We have severe limitations to the weapons you can use, amongst other things. Here's what DICE is doing with this patch. First of all, gadget practice. Practice shooting the Panzerfaust and other gadgets against stationary and moving targets. Skeet shooting. Improve your accuracy in the skeet shooting arena with various difficulty levels. Grenade practice. Learn how to accurately toss grenades at randomly spawning barrels, again with different levels of difficulty. Another activity, bullet drop. Various modes will now offer you the ability to toggle bullet drop, a visualization of where your bullets will land. The open mini range now features 1-star, 2-star and 3-star practice range ribbons that can be obtained by scoring streaks in easy, normal and hard, and the practice range ribbons can be viewed in the scoreboard for solo play or co-op play separately. Being honest here, the practice range is not really a feature I'm ever going to use that much, so me giving feedback on these changes wouldn't really be very relevant. However, I do understand that some people do use it, and so this might be the improvement that you were looking for, but at face value, I see no changes to the weapons that you can use, and that was the biggest piece of feedback, so if that hasn't been changed, then maybe people won't be very happy with this. Footstep audio is getting another tweak in the latest patch. Right now, footsteps are extremely loud in Battlefield 5 after their buff in the last patch, but feedback on that has been that it's too hard to be sure how close or far away the enemy is, and that when multiple enemies are nearby, the noise is just too much, and it can block out other important audio. In this patch, DICE is putting the settings somewhere between the launch values and the values of the patch at the beginning of January, so they're striking a middle ground, and hopefully they can now nail this situation. At 25 meters distance, the footstep volume will now be just 28% of the volume heard when compared to someone standing right next to you. This compares to the previous January update value of 71%, which is still extremely loud, and the launch value of just 10%. So you can see why at launch, footsteps were very, very quiet. And footsteps on snow have been individually tweaked to make them slightly quieter too, because footsteps on snow will be slightly quieter. The long-awaited bipod deploy fix is arriving in this patch, which makes me very happy. Multiple issues with detection have now been fixed, which should mean that you don't get those random undeploys if you move your aim too much, or where you really think you should be able to deploy on something, but you can't. Those situations are really annoying. At the same time, DICE is also implementing a new prone block system, where instead of you entering the prone stance and then being made to stand up because you can't prone there, instead you'll now simply be blocked from proning. There's no UI messaging to let you know that this block is happening right now. That's going to come in the next patch after this one, but the feature will be active, and you'll need to adjust to sometimes hitting the prone button and not seeing any movement from your soldier because you can't prone there. And while we're on the subject of movement, a PC-specific implementation for now: if you hold the vault button when falling towards a ledge, the soldier will grab onto the ledge if you're within the activation area. Previously, you had to hope the game would let you grab the edge by hammering the key that you'd applied to vault, so having a proper hold down activation is awesome news. Hopefully, this one comes to console soon. A fix for getting stuck on small objects has been applied as well. This video here shows that if you run over smaller objects, you'll now go over them automatically. If you come up to them slower, you will still need to vault over them, but sprinting now runs straight over the top. That's great news. The faster ledge grab animation for shorter falls, shown in this video here, is being implemented in this patch, hopefully reducing the amount of times you're killed when pulling yourself up, since the animation will finish a little bit quicker. The tracking of enemy soldiers should be improved in this patch. The leaning animations of soldiers running around a corner or turning sharply, those have been reduced somewhat. This should mean enemies look a little bit more upright and steadier, and that should improve combat scenarios when you're shooting at a moving target. An issue where soldiers' heads looked like they were facing the wrong way when reacting to something in the world, that's been fixed. Hopefully that should solve the issue when you're killed by an enemy who appeared not to be looking at you. That was really frustrating. And most importantly, I think, the transition between the kill card and the man down screen has been fixed. There's no longer going to be an empty 3-second gap. That shortens the amount of time you're dead, and it allows you to get back into the action faster. As an addition, this means the issues with medic revive icons not showing the countdown to death has been fixed as well. You'll be able to cancel the throw of a grenade in the next patch, press reload or any of the inventory switch buttons that you've assigned, and the throw will stop. The ADS animations of all weapons and sights have been revamped to better reflect the correct point of aim when you're strafing and shooting. All rifles, SMGs, LMGs, and shotguns have improved visual stability across all of the sights and scopes that you can choose, so firing your first shot will be more accurate when you're aiming. The bug where SMG magazines would disappear when swapping from the smoke grenade launcher has been fixed, and those damn pesky floating AT mines have been stuck back on the ground as well. The extremely annoying deploy point is no longer available bug has supposedly been fixed with this patch, along with reinforcement mentions being totally removed from Domination and Team Deathmatch. Bulletproof bushes on the Panzerstorm map are no longer bulletproof. A screenshot button has been mapped into the options menu that you can assign if you want to, and the bayonet icon has been added to the kill feed and the kill cam. That should make Flakfire happy. There are, of course, even more changes and fixes coming than what I've spoken about in this video, but in theory, this patch sounds awesome. In practice, we need to wait and see. The last patch introduced a rather annoying issue, the kill cam delay, which kind of marred the introduction of the new chapter, so I'm going to reserve full judgment until tomorrow when the patch drops. And then we can see if the fixes applied don't break anything else. That said, I am excited for this patch, and most of all, I want to test out those new Panzerstorm tweaks. Thanks very much for watching today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications switched on, that way you won't miss any of my future Battlefield 5 videos, and tomorrow I'm going to post up a video on the new Panzerstorm changes in action. But until then, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.